All right, A and P2 students, we're continuing on with the digestive system. We've made it down to the large intestine, so we're going to talk about the basic functions that the large intestine has and some other qualities, characteristics of the large intestine as well. I'm going to go to our objectives. Right before we talk about the large intestines, I wanted to kind of give you a summary of the endocrine control. So the hormone control or regulation of the digestive system. The three hormones that you guys should be familiar with are gastrin, cholecystokinin, and secretin. And a lot of this we covered when we talked about regulation in the stomach, and we talked about these three hormones. So that's included in this little summary. But what we didn't talk about is how these hormones regulate the small intestines. And the pancreas and the gallbladder and those things. So that's what's new in this particular objective. So the bolus in the stomach, we've covered that. The presence of a bolus in the stomach will stimulate those G cells to release gastrin. That hormone will get into the blood, and then it'll come back and stimulate those parietal cells to release their hydrochloric acid. And cause also the chief cells to release their pepsinogen. So again, activating the stomach. And then once chyme enters the small intestines, remember we talked about we had receptors in there that detected the presence of chyme or the acidic substances within there, or the proteins. And that would cause the small intestinal cells to release cholecystokinin. We already talked about how the role cholecystokinin plays in regulating the stomach, and it's going to inhibit the stomach contractions and stomach secretions. But what we didn't talk about was the cholecystokinin will stimulate our gallbladder to release bile, which makes sense. We want bile down there since there's chyme in the small intestines. And then also stimulate the pancreas to release its secretions, which again makes sense because we want to get those secretions from both the bile and the pancreatic secretions down there in the duodenum to start having their effect on the chyme. And then the chyme in the small intestines, it would also receptors would detect that and release secretin, the other hormone. And we talked about how that also inhibited stomach contractions and secretions like the cholecystokinin. But what it does in addition is stimulate our pancreas to release secretions as well. So these two hormones have a role in stimulating our gallbladder and our pancreas too during this process. So there's some other information in the book about hormones and additional functions, but these are the ones that I'll be testing you on. So, all right. So functions of the large intestine. So the large intestine, there's some absorption going on there, not as much as in the small intestines. Mainly, it's going to be water, because realize there's been a lot of water introduced into the digestive tract through this whole process of digestion. And we don't want to lose all that water through our feces. So we're going to get water absorption going on in the large intestine and causing the waste products to kind of become more dry. And there is some electrolytes. Sodium and chloride are the two big ones that get absorbed. And then we'll talk about this. There's bacteria, normal flora we call it, beneficial bacteria that live in the large intestines, and they have a role in making B vitamins, so like the complex B vitamins, riboflavin, thiamine, and vitamin B12, and so they make those. And then they also make vitamin K. And so where those vitamins get absorbed is through the wall of the large intestine. All right, so those are the things that it absorbs primarily. And then also the large intestine has a role in storing fecal material until it's ready to be eliminated. And it also exhibits peristalsis. You can see peristalsis with the large intestine, and again, it needs that so it can move the waste towards the anus for elimination. So So those are our functions of our large intestines. And I don't think well, there's a picture of large intestines here. So those things are going on in our large intestines. Now, when it comes to the bacterial action in the large intestines, this talks about other things that the bacteria are doing in the large intestines. And one thing is besides they're producing the B vitamins and vitamin K, they're also breaking down. They make their own enzymes. They have enzymes, so they'll go ahead and break down any carbohydrates or proteins or lipids that actually remain in the chyme and they don't get broken down, digested, or reabsorbed in the small intestines. They will break them down with their own enzymes. So now when they do that, though, their enzymes are different than our enzymes, so they break it down into products that, we don't usually break stuff down into. And so you'll get things like carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions and hydrogen sulfide, methane, indoles. So some of those substances lead to the odor of feces. So that's another role of the bacteria in our large intestines, besides making all the complex B vitamins and the vitamin K. All right, and then the last thing is to talk about the defecation reflex. So what the stimulus and the receptor and integration center effectors are for that. And so we have a picture showing that. We'll find it. Here it is. We'll start down here. So they break it down into 4 steps here. So the presence of the stool in the rectum is going to be the stimulus, and there's little receptors called the baroreceptors that detect that stretch in the wall of the rectum. So here's the thing, that signal will go just to the spinal cord. So the sensory neuron will take that signal to the spinal cord. So the spinal cord is the integration center for this reflex, this defecation reflex. So they'll send that information there, and then the spinal cord is going to be deciding what needs to be done. And so it will send a signal through parasympathetic motor neurons down not only to the wall, the smooth muscle that's in the wall of the rectum, but also to the internal anal sphincter as well. And so that's going to cause the response of the effectors is going to be their effect should be contraction, so they can push that stool out. And then the internal anal sphincter is going to relax, so that will allow the stool to pass out. Now, so that's our little reflex for defecation. But we have the ability, our brain does, a higher order part of our brain, to control this, because if it's an inconvenient time to defecate, then our brain will send a signal to our external anal sphincter and cause it to remain constricted and not let stool pass out until we're ready, until it's time. So we do have a conscious decision with the defecation, even though this is a sort of an involuntary reflex going on in our large intestine. So, all right. So the next video, we're gonna focus on the breakdown of the 3 primary nutrients that we ingest when we're eating. So we're gonna talk about how carbohydrates are digested, how they're absorbed, how they're used in the body. We'll also do lipids and proteins as well. So we'll go over that in the next video.